Hello everyone, back to today's second video. So we've already done Solar Sunday, and you can find that here on the homepage. Just scroll down the page a bit, it's underneath the link ads. And that's going to be placed on the Solar Cycle 24-25 updates page. This evening there'll be a written report that goes with that as well. So very exciting day. We only do 2 or 3 Solar Sundays a year at Gazovid, so there won't be many free this year, but be another couple hopefully. Through the course of the spring and the summer. Of course, when we get to the winter updates at the beginning of September, we incorporate all of the solar stuff into those winter updates anyway. So if you want to check out Solar Sunday, that's how you can do that. This video is going to be looking, amongst other things, at what's happening in the stratosphere, the Arctic Oscillation, the North Atlantic Oscillation. We're going to have a look at the National Ice Centre chart, see how snow cover is doing across Europe and North America this season. And we'll have a look at weather next week to 10 days as well. So a lot to cram in, and I'll get on with all of it for you in a second. Before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages. I just mentioned those. Have a browse, just click through the links. If you don't have any articles that you're interested in, you're going to help us page website, and thanks very much for doing that. It's also video ads for those pages which own content. When you watch them, you can close them back up again by pressing the little black X in the ad unit. So that's how you get the videos to close back up again once you give them a watch. Big thank to everybody for doing that. So let's start off with the stratosphere. This is from the JMA, Japanese Meteorological Agency. This is the temperature at 30 HPA. Had a big warming at 30 HPA from where we was earlier in the month, which was pretty cold down here. Temperature shot up over the past week, and we peaked there around Friday. Since then, we have started to lower the temperature again. We can't sustain those sort of temperatures in the stratosphere over the North Pole all that long. So temperatures are beginning to lower now, but that was a big and very significant warming, more significant than I was expecting actually, at 30 HPA. If we go a bit higher up to 10 HPA, we can see, again, we did have a big warming there, maybe not quite as much as I was expecting. I thought it would probably go up to that sort of part of the chart, but a big warming did occur about a week ago anyway. Then through the course of this week we've been gradually dropping things down, although the very latest is that we've actually ticked up a bit. And when we look at these charts tomorrow, if we do look at these charts tomorrow, we may find we've moved up a little bit more actually at 10 HPA. This is the top level of the stratosphere, or virtually the top level of the stratosphere. This is where the warming started, of course. We was colder than average down there, and then we went up to here very quickly. And we know from looking at 30 HPA that that has moved down to a lower level of the stratosphere. We don't know yet if it's going to go into the troposphere, but as it did move down significantly into 30 HPA, you would assume that we're probably going to take this down further in towards the troposphere. The reason we look at this is that when you get a warming in the stratosphere, a sudden push-up in the temperature, if it gets down into the lower levels of the atmosphere, which is the troposphere, and that's the boundary of the atmosphere where weather takes place, where we get the high-pressure, low-pressure systems. If the warmth moved down into the troposphere over North Pole, it can set up blocking, it can set up high pressure, and high pressure blocking over North Pole is a route to getting the cold out of the pole and down into the mid-latitude. So it's often a precursor, when you get a warming like this in the stratosphere, often a precursor to getting cold weather pushing out into the stratosphere. Of course, the two caveats is that you never know where the blocking is going to set up. Well, you never know if the blocking is going to set up, but if the blocking does set up, you never know where it will be, and that means you never know for sure where the cold temperatures are going to be pushed out either, because if one place is on the cold side of the block, which is normally in our hemisphere to the north or the east of the block, then somewhere else, I should say east of the south of the block, then somewhere else, which is normally the west and the north of the block, somewhere else is going to be on the mild side of it. So you never entirely guarantee, you're never guaranteed to get cold weather from these stratospheric warmings in any one place. But it is a precursor very often to pushing cold air down into the latitudes. The latest in terms of the temperatures at 10 HPA over the stratosphere. This is website metroshield.fr. This is the GFS model. Shows that, again, it is warming up a little bit over the pole in the stratosphere at 10 HPA. So I think tomorrow we may well find that black line on the JMA chart ticking back up again. So fairly significant warming over the next 24 hours again. Then after that, it begins to cool down. As I say, you can't sustain these temperatures indefinitely in the stratosphere, so it begins to turn colder, although this does look pretty weak to stuff. We're certainly not seeing a temperature crash taking place there in the stratosphere. And that continues into the extended part of the GFS model as well. It looks like things are just staying very quiet, really, in terms of the stratosphere. No dramatic cool down, no more warming, although we have got a bit of warmth starting to get going again over towards Siberia and towards Canada just there. But really no sign of any renewed warming, no sign of any drop in temperature, or notable drop in temperature either. Just looks like things are going to gradually cool down in the stratosphere at 10 HPA. Over the coming couple of weeks. So having a look at the Arctic Oscillation and the North Atlantic Oscillation, next this is the Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast chart. The black line here tells us where the Arctic Oscillation has been. The red lines at the end, where the GFS ensemble's forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. This is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere over the North Pole. It isn't driving anything, just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. So through most of the winter, this is 1st of December just here, we've been positive with the Arctic Oscillation, telling us we've had a fair amount of low pressure over the pole, and that's the reason we've had up to now quite a mildish winter in the west of Europe. Has been a much colder winter in the east and the southeast of Europe, of course, because with low pressure over the pole, it has kept the westerlies enhanced through the Atlantic. And that was particularly true for December, less so, I think, for January. Anyway, the forecast part of this is the red lines at the end. They're individual members of the GFS ensembles, and they're going negative. So we are seeing the Arctic Oscillation dropping into significantly negative territory through the course of February. This is 1st of February here. This is 16th just here. So significant drop in the Arctic Oscillation coming up over the next week or two, and that is telling us that high pressure is going to go. Now that might be because of the stratospheric warming. You can never say that one thing directly leads to another. But we do know that after stratospheric warming, we tend to get high pressure forming over the pole. So again, you can't say definitively that the drop in the Arctic Oscillation is because of the stratospheric warming, but it is interesting that we see that occurring a week or two after that stratospheric warming. So signs from the Arctic Oscillation, I've got blocking appearing over the polar field in the next week or two. However, stubbornly, the North Atlantic Oscillation is refusing to go negative. So again, this is observed and forecast chart for the North Atlantic Oscillation. Black line here tells you where the North Atlantic Oscillation has been. The red lines at the end where the GFS ensemble is forecasting North Atlantic Oscillation to go. And so back into December, we was generally a little bit on the negative side with the North Atlantic Oscillation. Through January, the first half of January anyway, we was mostly positive. Second half of January went a bit negative again. The latest is that we're just here. We are positive with the North Atlantic Oscillation, and the GFS ensembles are forecasting us to stay positive with the North Atlantic Oscillation as well. There's no sign that we're dipping down into a negative NAO. And this is going to be a problem. I've been explaining this in the videos over the past week. This is going to be a problem if we're to get sustained cold weather, because although we might have the blocking over the pole, the North Atlantic Oscillation is not going into a negative territory. And that's telling us that the westerlies are going to remain quite strong in the Atlantic, certainly for the next week or two. So that's going to be fighting against any blocking that does form. So we may well have northern blocking, maybe we'll have high pressure across Scandinavia or maybe even Greenland, but without the North Atlantic going into a negative phase, which means that the low pressure around Iceland and the high pressure through the Azores are weakened, and thus the westerlies slow down. Without that, we're going to struggle to get sustained cold weather. You can get sustained cold weather, or you can get pretty cold weather with a positive NAO from Scandinavia You can't really do it from Greenland, however. So we're going to have to see the NAO trending down, I think, to really lock into a prolonged cold spell. But it certainly doesn't rule out an extended period of easterlies from a Scandinavian high-pressure system. Just seeing what's happening with snow cover across Europe and into Eurasia. So this is from the National Ice Centre, which is part of NOAA. We can see that the west of Europe is generally snow-free, so through UK, Ireland, Spain, into France, away from mountainous regions anyway, it's generally snow-free. But as we go eastwards, really from the east of Germany, we've got lots of snow cover still left here in the east and the southeast of Europe. And then, of course, as you get back into Russia, completely covered in snow, as you would always expect. Central northern Scandinavia not doing too badly for snow cover either. Down in the south of particularly Sweden, not so good there. Not much away snow cover for southern parts of Sweden, but go north and you do run into that snow cover. For North America, this looks pretty grim really for the States, to be honest. The snow lovers there not having a great time. We have got some snow in the far north and northwest of the States. And most of Canada is covered, but sort of through the Midwest, it's a bit patchy. I mean, getting into the east, not much at all, really, in the east. There is some in the far northeast, but going down into the populated areas, again, generally not doing very well with the snow cover at the moment across much of America. I think it's been quite a mildish winter for America this year. The temperature anomaly for the next week shows that it is generally quite mild across most parts of the states. It's cold as it has been all winter in the very far northwest. But really, most of the United States coming out with milder than average temperature. We've seen quite a bit of that this year, actually. The temperature for Europe is rather cold, though. Look at this. Most parts of Europe coming out cold on average the next week from the 5th through to 13th of February. Particularly so in the east of Europe. That's where quite clearly the core of the cold is in the east of Europe and then going up in towards Russia. But in the west of Europe, it's a bit colder than average even there. So the UK, Ireland, down into France, temperature anomalies coming out cold on average, and Scandinavia going quite cold as well. They've really been suffering with a lot of milder than average temperature anomalies this winter, but things look like they're cooling down for them. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next 2 weeks. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average. It just looks like we're hovering around average, to be honest. Nothing particularly exciting going on with those temperature anomalies. And this has downgraded, the GFS ensembles have downgraded the easterly quite a lot over the past couple of days. However, I'm going to show you the very latest hot off the press operational run of the GFS, which has really upgraded that easterly again. So still really uncertain, I think, as we go from around Thursday, Friday onwards. But I suspect we might be starting to see things beginning to trend colder again as we're moving up towards the middle part of February. Precipitation shows quite a lot of rain coming through tomorrow, and then after that it looks like we've got a bit of a drying trend. There is precipitation coming through at times, however, and that could be wintry showers coming in with those easterly winds. So for eastern areas, I think you could get a little bit of snow at the end of the week. Let's have a look at the GFS, and this is the latest. I'm just talking about it. Hot off the press, this is the 6 o'clock run. Starting on Thursday with those easterly winds beginning to get established, that's bringing cold air into the east. This low pressure in the west is being blocked by that Scandinavian high. As we go through into the weekend, well, at the end of the week into weekend, so this is Friday, we've got high pressure over Scandinavia. Slightly better position than the GFS has been positioning in. It's a bit further north, which allows more of an easterly wind that could probably bring in snow showers to eastern counties at the end of the week. Those easterly winds continue into the weekend. Now, there's some sort of disturbance in the North Sea just around here on Saturday. If we go through to Sunday, we can see that disturbance is actually pushing in towards the eastern side. This little kink in the isobars just here. So that could be bringing some snow, maybe certainly snow showers, maybe something a little bit more significant in off the North Sea next weekend. It is a cold weekend with the winds staying in from the east. Into start of the following week, so this takes us to Monday 13th of February, we're beginning to see the Atlantic having a go. However, this high pressure across Scandinavia is now starting to look much more stubborn than it has done over recent GFS runs, which just wanted to steamroller the Atlantic through. Now we see quite a big block there across Scandinavia. So as this system comes in, Monday into Tuesday, it is stalling. There's a proper stall taking place there with a weather front that's coming up against this wedge of cold air. And that's a bit of a snow event taking place there early, sort of into the third week of February. That's a snow event as the Atlantic pushes up against that block of cold air. There's the dew points for 6 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, 14th of February, showing they're widely below freezing. And there's quite a lot of precipitation through the country as well, telling us that any rain, any precipitation is falling as snow, almost certainly. Beyond that, in towards day 10, we keep it cold, really. High pressure across Scandinavia, very stubborn, keeping the winds and the flow in off the frozen continent. And those easterly winds on this run of the GFS model anyway just continue into the second half of the month. This takes up to Sunday 19th of February. The easterlies firmly in there, still being bitterly cold air, particularly to the south, probably snow showers as well. So that's a prolonged cold spell now that the 6 o'clock run of the GFS is going for. It's probably a bit overdone, but it does show you, well, I always say this, when the easterlies get in, they can be very hard to get rid of. Always harder than the models think they will be. So you can sustain those easy winds for quite a long time once you get into the pattern. This is the EWF, so again the east is establishing at the end of the week, going to the weekend, and we keep winds in from the east. We're further south with the high pressure though, with the EWF compared to the GFS, which means it isn't quite as cold with those easterly winds, but the flow is still off the continent, so still pretty chilly, and we keep it mostly settled and dry up towards day 10 with high pressure remaining in control, centred to the east, still bringing the air in off the continent, but that isn't as wintry as the GFS 6 o'clock run. But it is still quite cold, mostly dry, cold and frosty with that scenario. Finally, CFS V2 for the next month. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. The first week period takes us from the 5th through to the 11th of February. We find a big ridge of high pressure over Scandinavia. Low pressure in the Atlantic is being blocked, and we're bringing in those easterly winds. So that's cold for the coming week. We've got the wind in from the east, and we're dragging increasingly cold air in from off the continent. Week 2, which is the 12th through to the 18th of February, again high pressure still centred over Scandinavia, going to the north and the west of the country as well, a trough down to the south. Again, the wind remains in from the east, so that will be another cold week, and possibly with some snow potential for the south. Week 3, which is the 19th through 25th of February, looks a bit different. We place a trough over the top of the country, but we've got quite a lot of blocking now getting going around Greenland and down into Newfoundland. So this would be a cold trough, and I suspect we would be bringing in a lot of cold air into that trough of low pressure. So that could be wintry as well. Perhaps not quite as cold as the week before, but I think probably with a little bit more snow potential there with that one. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 26th of February through to 4th of March, and the high pressure for blocking is weakening up to the north. Trough of low pressure is still there around the UK, but more to the west of us. So I think the flow here is now going back into the Atlantic. So we get to the end of February, into the start of March, and we start to bring in milder air from off the Atlantic. But that does look quite a cold month from the CFS V2. So the temperature anomaly for the coming week is coming out colder than average, particularly so for England and Wales. Week 2 temperature anomaly looks very cold. Look at that, the 12th through to the 18th of February. It's hard to make out, but we are bringing those blue colours in across England and Wales. That's temperature anomalies around 3 to 4 degrees colder than average. So a really cold week there with the CFS for that middle period of February. Still quite chilly through to week 3, but much less so the temperature is recovering. As I say, that week, 19th, 25th of February, isn't as cold, but it might have a little bit more wintry potential in terms of snow. And then finally, we get to the end of February and start of March. This is 26th of February through the 4th of March. I'm going a bit milder than average as the flow returns back to the Atlantic. So CFS, and we was doing this on Friday actually, we did January Friday. CFS seemed to get really quite a cold February once those easterlies get going at the end of the week. They're in for some time, a couple of weeks of easterly winds, which could be really quite cold indeed. And the GFS, after an extended couple of days of wobbling about and trying to bring the Atlantic back, the GFS might be starting to move in that direction for a fairly prolonged cold spell as well. So we need to keep an eye on what's going on with this. If we do lock into an easterly pattern, and we can do that with the NAO positive, as I said, we can sustain an easterly for quite a while. If we do sustain an easterly for quite a while, there's bound to be snow scenarios cropping up, usually quite unexpectedly. So wait and see where that is going, but for the moment, it looks like we could be in for quite a coldish February. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.